Hi, thanks for reaching out. Sorry for the absence of contact. I will fill in. And what I'm looking for in this first video is kind of just like the rough triage of what we can find. And then there are some deep statistical analyses, especially since these are businesses, even if they're nonprofit, like the Salt Lake Tribune has become. There's got to be ways of finding those. And we recently switched away from a database that had good stuff. So I'm asking um, my peers of what the equivalent is. So this is just to get you started. So in order, AI is my favorite place to go. Not necessarily because it gives me the answers, but because these days, at least Gemini, is pointing to things. So there's like the Nieman Journalism Lab, Wikipedia, and there's annual reports. So for each one of the newspapers, you could go through, but it's inconsistent. So if you wanted to do like a complete industry review, it's kind of a mess. Having said that, this is like one place to kind of look for trends and ideas and brainstorm. So it's not necessarily like the best data, but it's good to give you an indicator of where we're looking for things. Interestingly, you were looking at Alliance for Audited Media, ASNE Census, Bacon's Newspaper Directory, and things like that. Some of those have transitioned to become databases where you can make inquiries like that. So I'm going to show you some of the things that we've got that can do similar things, but not an exact answer. So having said that, every newspaper, especially in the United States, seems to have their own Wikipedia entry, and they all have their circulation. The important thing, again, this is like the AI, and this is where the AI is grabbing stuff, is you can see where they grabbed that from. And this is one of those moments that you talked about, the U.S. Postal Service. I have no idea how the U.S. Postal Service keeps records, so that's something I'm going to have to look up too. So you can kind of get some ballpark ideas of where people are gathering media, and unfortunately, many of them are behind paywalls. Another one is we start to get into reports where other people have taken media and churned out a report. This might be, well, this is typically the strategy that I recommend to students, but it depends on the level that you're looking at. So again, a homogenized bit. So Pew Research Trust, have you ever heard of the Pew Research Center? They do a lot of public opinion polling, but they also do like states of media and things like that. And so this is like a good report. And this is one that gave me the scope over a long period of time. The important thing on this one is they used the Alliance for Audited Media. So I'm going to see if I can track that down. But it looks like that's a good one. And maybe if we find reports, we can request them from other libraries without getting into that. But it seems like that's a database. Okay. That's with the bad news. Here's the good news of stuff that we have access to. And I'm going to close these just so I know where I'm at. Okay. From the Marriott Library, the first place that I go to for business information and like future projections and trends and like histories and things like that is IBISWorld. So if you go to library databases, you have to have been logged in first. Go to the letter I, and the database right here, IBISWorld. This looks at that hard data that's required by governments, so we know how businesses are doing. So if you just type in anything like newspaper, you can see all sorts of things that are going on. So there's like journalists, you can look at information in there, but let's look at newspaper publishing. Is it searching? It is. Here's the cool thing you can do. This is what's called the NAICS number. And so you could look at that in an AI search. So let's do NAICS, North American Industrial Classification Code. So if you look that up, you can see you can see more statistics that you can't have. We'll help you track this stuff down. But you're going to find other people who are publishing on things like this. So you might be able to find other info just using cross-referencing with codes that you get from stuff like that. For what it's worth, this is just more ideas of where else to go. The IBISWorld report, however, takes all of that information, and typically for banks or investment firms, they create a report. And so you can see all of this stuff going on. This one's really good because it'll give you a lot of ideas and a lot of hard data that you can use to determine things going on. So barrier to entry is low. Life cycle, so life cycle is kind of like it's starting or it's a growth cycle. This is in the decline. They don't say anything like that without backing it up. And you can see, why is it, what's the issues going on? And you can see like local newspapers have closed or they've been consolidated with larger publishers, declining print, all this stuff that we already know. So this is a great index for research going on. Did it lose me? I lost the whole report. So you get the idea. You can cruise through all of that data, and there's a lot going on. And it'll have good statistics. A lot of it will be based on the industry reporting in that NAICS IDEO, but that's for mostly for-profit newspapers. Oh, here's the report. So all sorts of stuff that you can look at. I would say these are good for looking at keywords in scholarship. Another one that I want to show you, so that was IBISWorld. Another one I want to show you is Nexus Uni. Nexus Uni is a media database. Let's see, I'm just going to look it up. Nexus Uni, I have caps lock on. So on this one, this looks at, it's the content of newspapers. It's the content of trade journals. But you can put in keywords. Oh, I've already done one. Newspaper. I should do newspapers. So it's going to look for those keywords, right? And let's look in the last two. Let's look in the last 5 years. All content types. Let's just run with it. And I can show you the sorting options. These are newspapers where they're going to have a lot of facts and stories and things like that. But hopefully we're looking for like industry stuff. How we do that is there's going to be anecdotal stuff that shows up in like newspapers, but if you go into source type, we can go into trade journals. Trade journals are industry trade press. So these are people, so like the Journal of the American Medical Association, it's a bunch of medical people talking about the industry, or the American Library Association. Industry trade press are the journals that talk about things like that. And so we can see what this means from Business and Finance News, Financial Express, people who are interested maybe in investing in it, Supermarket News, and you could start to see what's going on. And why it shows up in the trade press is because it's people who are invested in that particular trade, if that makes sense. Whoa, Washington Post web traffic decreases almost 90%. Wow. Okay, so, and they'll offer indicators of like why that was happening. Oh, look at that. It was exacerbated by a political moment. What we can do then is we can go to the library website and we can do some searches. Yay, research day. So let me show you the library catalog searching, and then we'll go into 2 favorite databases, and then I'll be quiet and let you work on this while I go and try and find more statistics. So in newspapers industry has been around a long time. So what we can do is we can say, I want this to be like the main title of what we're looking for. In the library catalog, there's like 100 million different things, a lot of scholarly articles, a lot of books, a lot of newspaper articles, dissertations, and things like that. When I'm looking for this word only in the title, this is going to give us like the best of what's going on right now. And there's 439,000 results. What you can do is you can narrow down to things that are going on by date. So we can go to the end of the Bronze Age, or we can come up to like things published since 2010. And then there's the names of journals, but then we can go into specifically like books that are being written about this. But what we can also do is say, okay, I've got 702 books. What else you got going on for us? This is where we'd put in layoffs or industry or decline or trying to think of some other keywords. This is where we throw in those other things that people are talking about. And then that would be in any field. And then I can start my search over again. And this is where we get those data that we'd already seen bits of. So let's go straight to peer-reviewed journals. And then what we can do, this is where we have commentary on things like that. You could sort this in the same manner, but it's going to go into like granular, like gender or DEI, decline of the newspaper industry, a case study. This is the scholarship that is going to be used to define or use the data, if that makes sense. So let me show you how to use a scholarly article really briefly. You go into the scholarly article, and I think for what we're looking for, you're looking for the nuggets of data like the statistics, and maybe they have what you're looking for in the scholarly articles because they're asking the same questions. Oh, how wonderful. So is this Polish? I have no idea what language this is in. So there's a lot of different language issues going on with that. How wonderful. It's Slovenia. So be that as it may, that's how you dig around in the catalog, and you might find some things. Let me show you a couple of databases to go into. You can do language preferences. So if you speak more than English, you can look under with key terms using those different languages. If you go under business, you can find more in newspapers, scholarly articles, but I'm going to go into communication. And this is scholarly articles only in the communication industry. We can do peer-reviewed. We can do advanced search. So I'm going to do, let me show you what's going on. Newspaper, let's do newspapers or journalism. And let's look for the doom and gloom. Hello. Or decline. And we're going to do peer-reviewed only. I don't know if we have to do a language. We can see if we can avoid the press of languages we don't quite get. And this is where you're going to get people from the communication industry or academia looking at things like this. And there's all sorts of filters you can go into to narrow down by date. But a cool thing you can do is go in by subject, and you can see what some of the main ideas are. So maybe there's a threat to democracy with layoffs. You can see technological innovations are driving it. Economics are doing a big one. You can see maybe advertising revenues being siphoned off by search engines. You can see some of what's going on without even looking at the articles themselves. But there's going to be like case studies and things like that. So a lot of stuff to dig around in. Last one I want to show you. Last one I want to show you is if you want to do historic research, you can go into newspapers. And then I think, so we have New York Times, LA Times. I want to look up Wall Street Journal's historic, though. We have a complete run of Wall Street Journal going back to 1889. And what you could do in the advanced search is you could look at specific eras. So we can do newspapers and layoffs. Let's say that was in, let's just look at anywhere. So this is all of the Wall Street Journal, full text searching. And you can see if there's periods of time where this was going on. And you can see newspapers were really strong back in the day, but you can see starting in the 40s and the 50s, you could analyze each one of these. So the internet era, there's a big deal with layoffs and things going on, but then it kind of slows down and it even slows down even further in our current decade. That is a trend that you could examine and say, well, like what the heck was going on in the 70s? I imagine that was like economic. And you could just glean through primary and secondary sources of like, why were people going on? Oh, maybe this isn't about the newspaper's industry. Maybe this was just about economic. So this is where we would have to modify our search. And we would have to say, this has to show up in the document title. And then, again, we're just in these short little sections. You can see what's going on. Slow down in advertising, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dig around and I'm going to see what I can find for you in the form of statistics and something that's been published in the last 5 years and see what I can find for you. But this is just enough to get you started.